Hello everyone, welcome to Wrestling Royalty. I'm really sorry I restarted the counter for some reason there, so just keeping you a little bit of suspense just to get things started there. I'm of course Andy and I'll be your host tonight. We are talking about the return of CM Punk last night at WWE Survivor Series in Chicago. Of course, by now everyone's probably fully aware that CM Punk is back and making all the headlines as only CM Punk can seem to do. And I'll be asking your opinion throughout this. So please let me know if you watched Survivor Series. If you didn't watch Survivor Series, let me know what you thought of the return of CM Punk. Let me know what you thought of Survivor Series in general. There was some great matches on there, and it seems a shame to have been overshadowed by one particular moment. But what a moment it was! Just as everything seemed to be heading down the route of the pay-per-view ending, we saw the main title card come up in the bottom corner, and that normally signals the end of WWE programming. And as we've seen a couple of times with Triple H being in charge, he does like to play with us and deliver big moments. So we've had it in the past on NXT when we had Ciampa turn on Johnny Gargano, as they over on NXT. We've also had that when we had the return of Bray Wyatt. But possibly the biggest one so far that we've seen was the return of CM Punk. His music hitting, just as Michael Cole had said, it had been electric. And there we go. We were introduced to a balmy Chicago crowd going absolutely crazy for the return of one of their heroes in CM Punk. And I'll go through a few of the stats, but I can see Daniel's in. Really cool to see you in again, Daniel. Thanks for your support. War Games was mad last night. There was a couple of fantastic War Games matches, kicking off the show with the women's match, arguably the best match of the night. We've got another comment from Daniel there. CM Punk returned and Randy returned, which is crazy. Within the space of what was it, probably about 10, 12 minutes, we had two monster pops from the crowd. First of all, for Randy returning, just as it looked like the Money in the Bank briefcase might have been cashed in. Instead, we heard voices, and out came Randy Orton, and the place went crazy. About 12 minutes later, as I said, we'd also then hear one more massive pop for CM Punk, and we've also got Misfit Wrestling Podcast in. Nice to see you in again, mate. CM Punk got fired by a car and then was hired by another car 2 months later. Wild. Absolutely, yeah. The Khan's no relation, but certainly somewhat apropos that Khan has been involved in the firing and hiring. But as he says there, Punk return aside, Misfit enjoyed the hell out of the pay-per-view. It was a very good pay-per-view. Let me know what you thought about the individual matches if you want. I've got a little bit of time. We can go through that. I will be focusing a bit on CM Punk's return, but as I say, it would be remiss of me not to cover what was a fantastic pay-per-view or premium live event. All over, really. I thought every match was great. The ones that kind of stood out were the women's War Games for myself. Let me know what you thought of that match. There were some great stories throughout that. Becky and Charlotte reconciling, I thought was a great touch in that. I thought Bayley being MVP for Damage Control was really cool as well. But they didn't do much in the end. It was her who took the pin, so it'll be interesting to see if it kind of gets blamed on her by the rest of Damage Control when we get to SmackDown on Friday night. What we have been confirmed, I think it was about an hour ago by WWE, is we are going to have both Randy Orton and CM Punk are going to be in Nashville on tomorrow night's Monday Night Raw. So definitely get yourself in front of a Monday Night Raw. Of course, you can watch a Monday Night Raw stream over on Gimme a Hole Yeah. Dan will be covering it. He was on the show on Friday where we did a little bit of a preview. And boy, were we wrong when we said CM Punk probably wouldn't be coming back. And I think there's a lot of people who probably will be eating humble pie when it comes to that one. There's a lot of people saying, I'll do this if he comes back, I'll do that. And again, get yourself subscribed to Give Me a Hole Yeah, because one of the hosts on there, Anth, is going to have to eat some cinnamon. He made a bet with his co-host Dom that CM Punk would not step foot back in WWE. But here we are. He's returned. I was going to open the show with a quote, which was January 26th, 2014. CM Punk left Sports Entertainment, and on November 25th, 2023, CM Punk is back. Obviously, a little bit of a shot back to his first ever AEW promo, where he said he left professional wrestling August 13th, 2005, and in August 20th, 2021, I'm back. how time flies. In just 2 years, things have changed. If you go back and watch that AEW promo, boy, things have changed since he spat venom basically at WWE, and a lot of the kind of the shots that were said there. I actually watched it again today to remember exactly what was said, and one of them that I think I have to read out was, "I was never going to get healthy physically, mentally, spiritually, or emotionally, staying in the same place that got me sick in the first place." I would love to have been a fly on the wall when negotiations started between WWE and CM Punk. And all I can say here really is money talks. Triple H talked yesterday in the press conference after the Premium Live event, that talking about if you were the same person 10 years on, that reflects badly on yourself. You know, people move on within a decade of time. And there was shots kind of on each side. It was very famously said that CM Punk was served his notice on his wedding day to AJ Lee. So I don't think either side come out very well. Obviously, a lot of the poison that was kind of spread happened in November 2014 when CM Punk notoriously went on Colt Cabana's podcast. And I think the repercussions of that were a couple of lawsuits came out of it, both from Colt Cabana, from WWE. So it turns a lot of the industry around, a lot of talk about whether CM Punk, how professional he is, etc. And here we are talking about him back in WWE. So I can see, as I said earlier, Misfits confirmed that as well. The WWE Twitter said Punk will be on Raw tomorrow. Yes, a real tweet by WWE. Feels crazy, still feels very surreal. And he was watching Wrestle Talk's live reaction to Punk's return, and Luke Owen had the best reaction of, "It happened, but I keep telling myself I wasn't seeing this." It did feel very surreal, and it felt even weirder when they went to Byron Saxton was talking and introducing the press conference afterwards, and he said, "Oh, let's go back and relive that moment." And I think, over in the UK, it was approaching around 4:30, I think, a.m., 4 in the morning. So it was getting a bit sort of bleary-eyed time, and yeah, it didn't feel real. It felt like some weird fever dream, and I think it will only really hit when we see him in the ring tomorrow. Be interesting to see how they go about reintroducing him. Obviously, a decade or 9 years, 10 years is a long time to be out of the not the industry, but the company. Obviously, he's gone away and been very successful over in AEW, and things ended very badly. I'm sure the guys over on Gimme Hell, I'm sure the guys on Rebellious Noise will go at lengths in talking about his exit and his acrimonious exit from AEW. The rumor are that there was backstage fighting. He didn't see eye to eye with a lot of people. He fell out with some of the people who were the executive vice presidents over there in the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. We'll never truly know the full story of what happened. So it's really important to say that anything really is kind of, I guess, conjecture, because we don't know the details. Only a select few will ever know that. And either side might tell the story how they see it. I often say the truth lies somewhere in the middle. So it'd be interesting to see. One day we might get an autobiography or a couple of autobiographies where we can start to piece things together. But at the moment, we have to kind of go by rumors. But what is fact is CM Punk is back in WWE, and we will be seeing him in Nashville tomorrow night. I would guarantee whatever he's got to say will be getting some massive hits on YouTube. I was looking over the stats today, and it's currently sat 2.8 million views on YouTube for his return to WWE last night. In comparison, a few years on, his AEW debut hit 17 million views. So it'd be interesting to see over time whether that catches up, whether it's a case of that was lightning in the bottle, because they're two very different things. Like, I'm not into tribalism. I think it's great. Both have had companies have had a moment with CM Punk. CM Punk's moment for me will always be his one at Money in the Bank, disappearing over the barricade into the crowd after winning the title from John Cena. And last night it will be up there as well. And obviously, of course, you've got his pipe bomb moment. But over on AEW, he had some stellar matches across there with MJF and a couple of other matches. Even his last match Wembley as well was fantastic against Samoa Joe. At his age, I think it's great that he's still putting in these. He's in his mid-40s, and it'll be interesting to see how WWE plan to use him. I'm sure a lot of the conversation that they would have had around his return would have been centered around creative. He flirted with coming back to WWE, but stopped short. He worked for Fox instead of WWE directly on their sort of talk show that went on for a little while, and then ended up going across to AEW. So him to be actually back on WWE programming is massive. And I want you to keep telling me, what was your reaction to seeing him back? Are you excited to see him back? I know there are people who are very upset to see him back because of how he held himself. Again, watching back his AEW promo, he talks about on that promo that if he's done anything, he hears you, that's upset you. He hears you, he hears that. And he stopped short of fully apologizing for that. But again, there's a few shots throughout that and the rest of his time in AEW at WWE. So it's very interesting to see him now back. And with the company that he's kind of said in the past that made him sick. And we'll talk about later some of the reactions of what appears to be some of the reactions from people and how legitimate they actually are. A few more comments from Misfit. Came out, looked healthy. He did look healthy. I 100% agree. The pictures that were sent over on the press, I'll quickly get them up for you because that was one of the things I noticed is that when he left WWE, he looked like he had this kind of sallow eyes, very sunken. He looked like he was tired, and he kind of said that on his infamous brawl out that happened, where he'd had the fight afterwards. So he looked tired. He said he was tired, but this is what he was looking like yesterday. He looks happy. There's a couple more pictures I'll put up where he looks happy, he looks healthy, and I'm glad for him. But this is, for me, is probably the last chance he's really got when it comes to wrestling fans, because if he messes up here, I don't really see where he's got else to go. There's rumours that he was offered a contract by Impact Wrestling, or what's going to become TNA. He could have done stellar work for them and he would have got a few more eyes on that product. But at the end of the day, I think WWE have realised there's money on the table. I said in one of the WhatsApp groups that I'm in with the guys from Give Me a Hell Yeah, personally, I think CM Punk coming back to WWE was one of the last big pops that we had. So it's great to see him back and great to see him healthy. But there are some questions to be asked around where do we go from here? And creatively, and just him as a person, how is he going to respond to being back in a place where he has made it very vocal that he has no love lost, or have those issues kind of been moved on a little bit with the removal of Vince McMahon at the helm, very much a sort of figurehead at the moment, and even then we don't know how much his power actually extends to after the merger into TKO. Yes, clobbering time. Look, let me know what you think about the pop. Where does that go down in the sense of WWE, or the terms of WWE pops in recent history, in all history? Does it get close to any of the Stone Cold pops that we've had in the past? Really keen to hear what you thought of the Chicago crowd. I mean, they were always going to give him a good reception, weren't they? Punk's WWE return has more views than Roman's SummerSlam 2020 return. Says a lot. Yes, it does. It's a difficult one because I think Roman's stature has kind of gone on an upwards trajectory since then, and only recently has started to kind of climb down again, as he's not been around very much in the last couple of months, to say the least. It'd be interesting to see if CM Punk does land on Raw as full-time, or if he's going to have one of these sort of free agent spots where he can go between the two. At the end of the day, he's money. And his box office, he's going to get you figures. So if you advertise that he's going to be there, you want to capitalize on that as much as you can at the beginning before you really get him into a proper feud with someone. So it'd be interesting to see if he hops across to SmackDown on Friday or just sticks exclusive to Raw. At the moment, we don't know what his contract terms are. How many appearances he has to make. Is he a full-time wrestler? Is he going to be making sporadic appearances? And I'm sure all will become clear as time goes on. But we are led to believe it's a long-term contract. The issue is a lot of the information that's coming out is coming out from the same dirt sheets and sources that had no idea if he was going to be there or not. Some guessed that he was, some guessed that he didn't, and some just said, I'm not going to guess at all. So I kind of fall into the latter. I'm not a dirt sheet. I don't like to kind of speculate in terms of I have a source and this is what they're saying. I'll only ever say this is my opinion, and I can only ever go what my opinion is and my thoughts and fantasy book, etc. But Misfit, who kind of runs in the same sort of circles, seemed very obvious last night that Punk did not want to return to AEW back in June when they announced Collision. Yeah, there's things that seem to fall into place a little bit in terms of his last few weeks at AEW. We can talk about that in a couple of minutes. CM Punk returning to WWE is how you know for sure that Vince McMahon is not running the show anymore. Yeah, absolutely agree. But then again, I think Vince McMahon is one of the first people who would tell you that he'll do what's right for business. And it seems that Triple H is the same mentality as well. There's a very famous saying in wrestling, which is never say never. But a lot of people thought this was the one example that wouldn't fit into never say never. But WWE themselves actually tweeted those exact words out when putting his clip on Twitter, which currently has 23 million views. So that's an insane amount of views over on Twitter. Well, it's been discussed of him being a free agent like Brock and Logan Paul. Yeah, it's an interesting one because obviously Brock we haven't seen in a little while now. Logan Paul has got the US title, which is supposed to be an exclusive on SmackDown, but Logan Paul is Logan Paul. There's certain people within wrestling and certainly within WWE that can kind of dictate where and when they're going to be there. So it'll be interesting to see where he pops up. But we know for sure he will be in Nashville tomorrow night on Monday Night Raw. Vince had part in Punk's return, had no part in Punk's return. It was all Nick Khan and Triple H. Yeah, there was a direct question, I think, from Nick Houseman on the post press conference where he said, you know, who was involved? Was there anyone involved from TKO or was it all in WWE? And it sounds like it was kept very close to the chest in the sense of it was just Triple H and Tony Khan. Nick Khan definitely wasn't Tony Khan. That would be a shocker. But yes, it sounds like it was very much close to the chest. And one of the reactions that we saw was potentially. There we go. There's Triple H, Mighty Cold Day in Hell, Survivor Series, 10.6 million views on that particular photo of the two of them, which just kind of goes to prove that you can never say never. There's a very happy, smiley Punk. We've got Mark, LFC UK in. How's it going, Mark? Who's obviously quoting the CM Punk's entrance there for Living Colour, who I think have just dropped a remaster of Cut of Personality. So that was a good time for them because I'm sure they'll be getting a fair few Spotify streams now he's back on WWE. But yes, we saw one person who was not happy to see CM Punk back, and I'm not talking about Sam Smith over on Gimme Hill yet. I am talking about Seth Rollins. There are some videos going around of Seth looking very agitated and very annoyed. And it's crazy to think that he would have reacted this way if it wasn't some kind of angle or some kind of work, because Seth Rollins has always struck me as someone who is very professional, especially when it's around the ring and in front of cameras. It'd be very, very difficult to know whether it was all the work, as in going back to his interview with Nick Houseman. I think it was, I can't remember if it was SummerSlam or earlier than that, earlier this year, where he described CM Punk as a cancer and to stay away, Phil. So it's very interesting to see if Rollins has kind of gone in to business there and just said, you know what, I'm going to make the most of it. Again, unclear as to where the bad beef, where that kind of beef would stem from for those two. It's said that CM Punk came up with the idea for the Shield and wanted Seth Rollins in. It was Roman Reigns who was already not included in CM Punk's vision for it. But over time, I think it's more of a reputation thing that Seth's, kind of very WWE loyal to the soil, loves the company and will do anything for it. And this, for me, is Seth Rollins doing what is best and sowing the seeds for what could be an incredible feud. Flipping him off, swearing at him, telling him to F off. It kind of all feeds into what could culminate at WrestleMania. The one thing that CM Punk always seemed to want was a main event of WrestleMania. So it could be that we see Seth Rollins versus CM Punk on night 1 of WrestleMania and a potential Cody versus Roman rematch on night 2. But certainly the roster now, there's so many people you'd want to see CM Punk go in for, because a lot of who's prevalent now wasn't so prevalent back when he left, all the way back in 2014. So let me know who your dream matches are. Who do you want to see? Do you want to see CM Punk versus Seth Rollins? What other matches would you like to see CM Punk have? And let me know in the comments. While you're there, make sure you hit the subscribe button, follow along. I'll be doing a few more like talk alongs. I'll have some guests on. There might be a couple of people who have popped in tonight or will pop in the future. I'm sure Sam and Dan will both be back as well in the future. And Dan was doing his live talk along. He was watching along the Survivor Series yesterday, so go check out his reaction. I think they've clipped it over on Gimme Hell Yeah as well, which is a great reaction to see. Punk in the Triple H pick was like crazy. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's expressions. Pictures can speak 1,000 words, and that's definitely speaking to me on that one. Let's have a look. Mark, yeah, the remaster was a song he used, and I treat it as a leak. It was very suspect timing. I know some people had said, like it's just timing is a bit weird, but it was never going to stem the flow of people thinking he might have come back. But as Triple H said, it did feel like at one point everyone had just kind of accepted that it wasn't happening. People were even willing to bet like goodie bags and money and stuff if on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, if he did come back. And it'd be interesting to see if people put their money where their mouth is on that one, which since come out that the Rollins stuff has worked. Yeah, from the point of view that Seth Rollins is, in my opinion, consummate professional. Maybe not on Twitter, but certainly in the ring and everything that he kind of showcases himself. For me, it comes across that must be a work, and he's kind of making sure that they sow those seeds of discourse between them. We might see a little bit more tomorrow night on Raw, so definitely be tuned in for that one. The plan is to do Punk and Rollins at the Rumble. Very well could be. Obviously, the Rumble, they'll be wanting to make a big deal of it in January, and that's in, I think, it's Tropicana Field, where they filmed some of the COVID Thunderdome stuff as well. Triple H is looking forward to having actual people there rather than screens, he said. And we've got, Seth's reaction was a work. You could tell from when he was in the cages. Again, the kind of, I don't like calling them dirt sheets. The wrestling media sites, let's call them, have been saying that the people involved in the main event were told just before they went out, so they would have had an idea. And if you go back and rewatch the final few seconds of the celebration, it definitely feels like they're waiting for something to happen. Even if the rest of us were a little bit unsure, it's easier in hindsight and to watch for those things after the fact. But it was a great surprise. It will go down as one of the biggest surprises ever to happen in WWE. JJ207, welcome home, Punk. Good to have you in. Welcome to the channel, JJ, as well. So good to have you in, mate. Let me know who do you want to see. Who do you want to see CM Punk go up against in WWE now that he's back? CM Punk praised NXT when Triple H was running it, so I think Punk trusts Hunter as a booker if he liked what he saw of NXT. Yeah, it'd be really cool to see what CM Punk's creative is going to be like going forward, because I think most people would agree NXT and Triple H, that black and gold era, was one of the best in in recent history, in wrestling history, and it went up against someone in AEW who had all the momentum and the backing, and if you put that few years where he was going up against AEW any other time, it probably would have shone as well. Just unfortunately, they had to go up against something that was kind of very counter produced against WWE, and did very well. And they're still putting out amazing wrestling matches. But it'll be interesting to see how do AEW respond to this as well. there surely has to be a response, or maybe this is the shot in the arm that they need to go, right, let's get our house in order. Let's listen to what the fans are telling us, which is give us a little bit more story. They very much can deliver on excellent wrestling matches, but now is the time to give them a few more characters, give them a few more stories as well, which I think is what people are wanting to see across there. So what do you think? Is Seth working, or was his reaction to Punk return real? It very much feels like a work. It was very over the top. I would have thought if he wasn't happy to see there, he probably just wouldn't have reacted at all. It feels like if you were trying to downplay someone being back as not a special thing, or the person returning is not a big thing, why would you react that way upon seeing them for the first time? It feels like there's something being exaggerated. So that, for me, would be why it feels like a work, which is obviously what Misfit is thinking as well. And I feel you, but I really think it was a bit real. They will definitely work out facts. The language that he used in that interview a few months ago, where he called CM Punk a cancer, was obviously very inflammatory. But the thing I would go back and say is, watch that interview from the point of view that Seth Rollins is being Seth Rollins, the character. He's not being himself. He's very much speaking in character. He's dressed in his kind of like drip, like God of Drip, whatever it is that he calls himself, like clothes, and he's speaking in that way as well. So it's very difficult to glean. Maybe there's a hint of a bit of a barb of truth, but I'd be surprised. I think Seth Rollins is very much a case of he knows what's best for business, and he said even after that if it was best for business, he would do that for WWE as well. Raw really feels like a Raw after Mania tomorrow. And then the other thing is, we've got Randy Orton that's been confirmed as being there as well. So it's not just CM Punk. I agree. This feels like a big Raw. And this is like a return for Survivor Series. I think big things happen, and it's supposed to, because it's one of the big four, along with Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, and of course WrestleMania. But they're up in the ante. What are they going to do for Pops when it comes to the Royal Rumble, or what are they going to do when it comes for Pops WrestleMania? We got another return yesterday. R-Truth's back, and he was doing what he does best, which is silly backstage gimmicks. But he got a laugh out of the Chicago crowd, and even I was happy to see R-Truth back, even if he's kind of involved in that side of things. JJ, I think his response in the question is, who does he want to see CM Punk go up against? So many good feuds, hard to say. So where are you thinking they're putting Randy, blue or red? I feel SmackDown need more talent. We all know Punk going to Raw. Yeah, it'll be interesting whether they leave Randy on Raw, because that's where he was before he got injured. And he kind of, when he got the tag titles with Riddle, he was down on SmackDown as well, feuding with the Bloodline. But definitely for me, it feels like Randy's probably going to have to stick around to tell that Jey Uso story and develop that a little bit more. I'd like to see him have a bit more interaction with Cody as well, and then maybe even with Seth. So they've got a big history. But where we go now, it's really exciting, because there's just feuds all over the place. Of course, Judgment Day and Drew are still kicking around, and we'll have to see where they go with that. Again, the rumours are swirling. Drew McIntyre might not have re-signed an extension to his contract, and left in a bit of a rage yesterday. Whether Drew McIntyre was putting a little bit on there or not, we're not too sure. But again, time will tell. Drew's been going through a lot of personal stuff at the moment. So it'd be interesting to see where Drew ends up. Could he go across to AEW? Will he re-sign? Again, time will tell. But at the moment, the WWE roster is looking stacked. But I think in terms of the main event scene, with Roman Reigns being gone, they definitely need someone to fill that void. So one of Randy or CM Punk would be great to have on there. Otherwise, Raw suddenly becomes overstacked, if you get what I mean. Misfit will do it a work shoot. Ron's reaction is work, but he does legit hate Punk. Yeah, could be some truth, and he's just kind of playing on that, and that's generally where the best kind of storylines come from as well. I agree. I think it's going to be a great feud. The footage they can weave into this. I think Nick Houseman's going to be very happy if they start using that footage where Seth Rollins calls CM Punk a cancer in some sort of promo. I think he's going to get some viewing figures over there. Rollins said at a Q&A that stuff he said about Punk was legit and he wasn't in character. But again, it's very difficult to know whether that is in character. So it's those kind of like wrapped up riddles that we get in, whether it's kayfabe or not in wrestling. R-Truth, definitely happy to see him. Yep, he's back and kind of been interacting with someone like Tozawa and pretty deadly as well. It was well set up. It was nice, especially when you have those like what we would say is a bit cringeworthy adverts or infomercials or whatever you want to call them for Ruffles last night. But when you've got people like Otis, like you can make them like legitimately funny. So it was cool to see him get a little bit of a spot and a pop from the Chicago crowd as well. Now, if Randy does go to SmackDown, what would be a good feud besides Roman? Well, that's it with Randy. Like Randy Orton versus LA Knight would be an obvious one straight away. Logan Paul being across there. There are people who he could go up against, but it depends how he goes across because I think they're missing a couple of like big faces across there. Of course, if he stays on Raw, you've got people like Gunther who you could go into a feud with. But let's face it, if you've got a dodgy back and you're coming back from a very serious injury, I'm not sure if the physicality of Gunther is what you want to be going up against on Raw. Also depends who they have lined up for Roman at the Rumble. So they could do Roman Randy because we were supposed to get that at SummerSlam 2021. And let's face it as well, that he could go across there going after the Bloodline because he could have matches against Solo. He could have matches against Jimmy in the meantime while we're waiting for Roman to come back. So we've got that. But it definitely feels like there's something in the offing because we've seen Cody lurking around on SmackDown, having secret meetings with Nick Aldis. Nick Aldis has been speaking as well, and having that GM to GM talk and making sure that we know where he's going. And I think something's going on with that storyline with Cody moving back across, but keep your eye on that one. SummerSlam 2022. Of course, by then Randy would have been out injured. And we got the Brock rematch instead. Also heard Shin might have been talking to Okada. There seems to be more of the Japanese wrestlers coming across potentially. Triple H was outright asked yesterday about the women's Japanese wrestlers that are coming across and whether they hold interest in anyone else. And he just said, generally, if they're a wrestler and they're good at what they do, they'll be interested. He also said as much about the sort of performance talent they take out of college and go through the performance center as well. Interesting to see that he was asked about Jade Cargill as well and where she's at because she kind of disappeared from screens, and he's saying he wants her to be prepared for anything that's thrown at her, that she can knock it out of the park like he knows she can. So there's a lot of people due to come back that could come in already with the ones that are there. You start thinking it could end up a bloated roster. And it certainly feels like, I don't know if everyone else who's on here as well, so let me know, Misfit and JJ. There's a lot of emphasis going on the tag team divisions at the moment as well. On Raw, I believe we're going to see a tag team turmoil happening. So the tag division's getting a bit of love, both the women's and the men's. So it'll be interesting to see all these people they're adding back in. CM Punk's going to come back in and dominate different sections as well. And I think CM Punk versus Seth Rollins feud really gives us a big push for Seth Rollins, and that makes that title feel like it means something as well, which is one of the criticisms it's had so far. JJ, R-Truth looks the same age he did when he came in as K Quick with Road Dogg, and even before that as well. So I don't think the guy ages. He's definitely found the fountain of youth somewhere. Misfit doesn't think Okada is going to come to WWE. After Punk coming back, it's very difficult to say whether that's true or not. Who knows these days? Cody won't move to SmackDown until he wins the title. I disagree with that. I think he will go to SmackDown because he wants Roman's title. I think he's kind of said as much as well. But hey, this is why it's great to be a wrestling fan at the moment, because you can have these conversations. It makes sense. The Bloodline is the reason Randy was out. So yeah, that's in response to Randy potentially going over there. I feel like Julia's more likely to come to WWE than Okada. There's a lot of noise, but I'd imagine she's hot property in the sense of she'd go on anyone's roster in the US and instantly make it much better than it is as well. So it'd be interesting to see Julia. I think Raw's missing a couple of like headline women on their roster, so it'd be cool to see them introduced. AEW is definitely in trouble now. As I said earlier on, it'd be interesting to see how AEW responds. They, of course, did counter program by putting both, I think it was Collision and Rampage on back to back on Saturday night up against Survivor Series. And I think we'll wait a couple of days, see what the ratings are. But yeah, it's not looking great at the moment. But they've got a great roster as well. They just need to make sure they're utilizing it. And I think as well, Tony Khan needs to admit that he needs a little bit of help when it comes to steering that ship. It's become big, and he needs help to make sure he can stay focused, to make sure he can create compelling stories, and utilize what he has there, because he does have some great talent. He's got some great young talent as well. But at the end of the day, this will hurt them in the sense of CM Punk went across to AEW after being retired, was talked back into coming in. Now he's gone back, he's fell out of there. He had the issues that are there that have been covered. So it would be interesting to see how AEW respond moving forward. Triple H basically said, without saying it, Jay Carter, he did kind of say, without saying she's not ready for TV, but he also did it in a way that still made her sound like she's got the full WWE machine behind her. So yeah, really cool to hear him talking about her, even though she's not landed anywhere yet. And let's see if they kind of spread that out all the way through to the Royal Rumble or something. But you definitely want to kind of put her in to something where she can kind of be protected. So either put her with a safe pair of hands, like a Charlotte, like a Becky, like a Bayley, or you put her in a multi-person match like the Royal Rumble, where she can dominate without having to have too much prowess in the ring at the moment, while she's still kind of learning the WWE way, because from what everyone says, it's very different. But I'm sure we'll see Jade on our screens pretty soon. JJ would love to see Punk versus KO. That'd be a great match. KO versus anyone. Sign me up. He's a great talent. Dean barged in with his snacks. Good to have you in, Dean. I hope you enjoyed. I know you were watching last night with Survivor Series. I'd love to hear your thoughts on CM Punk returning. I know you were a big fan of CM Punk in his first run with WWE. So does he still hold that same magic? Are you excited to see what he's got this time around? If Punk Rollins is happening at the Rumble, then what does Punk do at Mania? Do we finally get CM Punk versus Stone Cold Steve Austin at Mania? Well, I know Stone Cold had said in interviews that he'd only come back to do, something if it was big and it made sense, and he was looking for something that would interest him back in. That's the one that's always been talked about, the two sort of rebels against each other. That would be huge. But let's see. I'm convinced it's going to be Punk versus Rollins night one of a WrestleMania over in Philly, and I will be there as well. So stay tuned. We'll be covering obviously that all the way through and beyond. But really excited to get some content out when we get across to Philly. Let me know if you're going to Philly, and let's see how many of you go in. If you're going to be excited about WrestleMania, it seems like they're making it a stacked card. It's WrestleMania 40 after all, so it should have already been big, but bringing CM Punk back in gives you one big player to use at the biggest and grandest stage of them all. Kervin, how are you doing, mate? Good to have you in. What was your favorite match from last night? I've got to say, actually, my favorite match was the Women's War Games. It was fantastic, and Misfit agrees as well. I like the stories that were in there the whole way through. I like the presentation of everyone. They did a good job of making sure Shotzi got some time in as well. So, yeah, the women's first match that was on, I thought was fantastic. I enjoyed The Miz versus Gunther. It wasn't quite as good as I thought it was going to be, but I thought they did a great job of maybe planting that seed that maybe The Miz could have won. When he did the low blow and then the skull crushing finale, I thought actually there might be a chance, but it was a great close finish. But I thought they did a great job of making The Miz look good in defeat, and also starting to show that you can get at someone like Gunther. So it'd be interesting to see who Gunther goes up against next, especially as we'll be heading very soon into Royal Rumble territory, and then we're on the road to WrestleMania. JJ's got a lot for both shows. AEW definitely holds it down. Yeah, I feel like it's something for everyone in wrestling, and AEW definitely delivers on the sense of great wrestling matches. So, yeah, definitely tune in if you're into great wrestling. And WWE's getting better as well. Each week they seem to have a couple of feature or focus matches where they try and put someone in like Chad Gable, Shinsuke Nakamura, etc., where they give you a good sort of like 20-minute or 10-15-minute segment of great wrestling, but they're still very much about the characters, the storylines, etc. So maybe that's what's compelled CM Punk to come back to the company. JJ, Women's War Games. So it seems like Women's War Games was everyone's favorite, which is great to see. To me, the women's titles match at Mania should be Rhea versus Becky and Bayley versus Io. Yeah, that latter one feels like it's building into something like that. It feels like there's a few things that are built that could happen as early as next month, but also you could build them through all the way through to WrestleMania. So Bayley versus Io, you'd have to kind of spread that out for a few months, but there's definitely ways to do that. Rhea versus Becky, I did say on Friday, it's very obvious that they're keeping Rhea and Becky separate and trying to keep them away from each other. So when that does happen, it'll be on a big stage. And it certainly feels like what bigger stage could you have than WrestleMania 40, Rhea Ripley versus Becky. But who would you see going over in that one? Because Rhea's keeping that belt on lock at the moment. So be interesting to see who's going to be the one who eventually dethrones Rhea Ripley. How long till Bayley's out of Damage Control? SmackDown might tell us a little bit more. They kind of even mentioned it on commentary that she did everything she possibly could to save people, to save the match. But she was the one who ate the pin. So it'd be interesting to see if the rest of Damage Control will blame that on her. And I think that's the way they'll go down. Is that I think the sort of the Japanese cohort of Damage Control will very much blame Bayley as she was the one who got pinned. That she didn't do quite enough. So I think that's the way they'll go down, personally. And then I want to see Dakota stay with Io as the mouthpiece for the group to make sure that they've got someone who can kind of cut that promo and still give them a voice, because they're all great in the ring, but maybe lack a little bit on the microphone for people in the US to kind of get behind or even boo, rather than just being, oh, they're foreign, so they should be booed. I think they deserve a bit better than that. And Dakota could be the ace up the sleeve when it comes to giving them a voice. Misfit said, I'd hold out till Mania for the Bayley stuff. Do you reckon WrestleMania needs to go back to one night? To be honest, I never wanted it to go away from one night, and now it has been on 2 nights. I don't think they'll ever go back, and I think it's a good reason for it, because it allows the audience to have a good night of wrestling and not be tired by the end, because when they had WrestleMania 35 in New York, that went on till it was way too late. It went on far too long. The whole show was bloated, and it had great moments throughout that probably would have been even louder if they'd allowed the crowd to get some rest in between. They just seemed a bit too non-stop. So going to 2 nights for me, I think is great. And it allows some of the roster to get longer matches. You can build into it. You can make it more of an extravaganza over 2 nights. And quite frankly, it's probably very good for WWE's bottom line and merchandise sales, etc. So I don't think it'll ever go back. Dean says it was a great pay-per-view. I really wanted to see a traditional 5-side elimination there that would have made it go from a great to a fantastic pay-per-view. Yeah, I definitely think there's an argument that you could have dropped one of the matches, in particular with the Dragon Lee match. It was a good match, don't get me wrong. The Dragon Lee versus Santos Escobar match. It was a great match, but you could have had that on SmackDown, and I think I would have liked to have seen some sort of tie-in with the original purpose of Survivor Series, rather than just the straight War Games. But I'd also, as much as I enjoyed the War Games match, I don't know about you guys, let me know in the comments, I kind of want it to go back to Survivor Series where it was elimination matches, because I think there's a bit more twists and turns in it. And I'd be interested to see if they utilize that going forward. Gives them a chance to get NXT involved as well. The year that they had NXT involved, I thought was fantastic personally. Would you want to see the return of elimination or not? Misfit doesn't want to see WrestleMania go back to night 1. JJ reckons Shotzi did awesome. Yeah, it was really cool to see Shotzi get some big moments in there. And as Triple H said afterwards, it allowed her to elevate her into that kind of upper echelon alongside those in that match. Kyrie's spinning back fist with the trash was nasty. I messaged as much to Dean and said the noise off of that trash can lid was horrible. I felt like it was ringing in my ears, let alone when I think it was Shotzi who ate that one as well. Awful. She got a mean sort of spinning back fist, and her elbow drop is a thing of beauty as well. Dean, 89% of his snacks in the women's match was a fab sign of a good match. Yeah, I guess if you're that invested and you're like nervously eating through to see how quickly you get through your snacks. Crazy match. A lot of love for the women's War Games match, which is really cool to see. I thought they absolutely nailed it, and as soon as they went up first, I think you knew that we were in store for something good. And the build's been great. They really know how to sow that seed and the stories there. I really want to see where we're going to go with the sort of reconciliation between Becky and Charlotte, and where we go with that, because that could eventually lead back into something with the Four Horsewomen, whether WWE put a gambit out for Sasha Banks or not, whether that ship has sailed already. That would be cool to see if she's one of the next bigger ones that might come back in. Per Fightful Select, there was talk within WWE of having Punk as a free agent. I mean, he can be on either SmackDown or Raw. Also, much of tomorrow's Raw is planned without Punk, so rewrites are now being done to fit him in. I'd imagine there'll be quite severe rewrites, and there'll be a few people a bit annoyed, but I would imagine most of them know it's going to get eyes on the product, and that's one of the big things. And then more eyes on the product means more opportunities for people as well. How to fix AEW product. I think that, to be honest, Kevin, that might actually be worth a discussion on its own, because there's people who are more knowledgeable about AEW over on Gimme Hole here that I would happily rope in to doing a conversation about AEW. They've got the bones there to be able to build. They just need to find a way to. For me, when I watch wrestling, it's all about the stories. I was brought up on the Attitude Era, and very much on the Attitude Era was about the stories. Some of it, if you go back and watch the matches, they're absolutely trash. But the storylines are what kind of made you tune in. Same for the Ruthless Aggression Era. And maybe AEW just need to have a look more at long-term storytelling, sowing that kind of throughout, and focusing not just on the main champion, but pushing other things up the card as well, like the tag division, like the trios division, like the women's division in particular as well needs a shot in the arm. There's a lot of things they can work on, but the good news is they've got the people to be able to do that. They now just need to find the backstage guys who can help Tony out on that side of things. I feel even if Punk did not show up, the show was still great. It would have been. It absolutely would have been. And we probably wouldn't have been sat here talking about a return for CM Punk. Hopefully we'd have been talking about how good Survivor Series is. And we still are. The comments show that as well. So a lot of people absolutely loved the women's match. I'm sure there's a lot of love for the men's match as well, because let's face it, I don't think I've ever seen a higher RKO than that one that JD McDonough ate on his way crashing down to the surface. What did you think of Randy Orton's return? He did a good job. It'd be interesting to see how healthy he actually is, because he didn't have to do too much to manage to protect him in that kind of environment with so much going on. But they had those couple of moments with Jey Uso, which were really intriguing. The clues were there. Cold day in hell. They made a point of it being cold at kickoff. The Chicago font they use as Punk's font too, still dropping Jericho. They did mention Jericho. I think I read that's the first time they've done that in weeks, if not months, that they've mentioned Chris Jericho's name. It wouldn't shock me massively if Chris Jericho one day does find his way back. But I think he's still enjoying having a lot of freedom over on in AEW. But I would never rule it out. He's going to be a Hall of Famer at some point. It's just a matter of time. But again, another guy who's been very outspoken at times. But sometimes you have to get behind the company that you work for. And I think when you look at Chris Jericho, that's a lot of what he's been doing, rather than there being true bad blood there. You think Punk shadow? In some respects, it was always going to happen, though. And that's why they had to have it happen right at the end, because you can still let everyone enjoy that main event. If they'd done it earlier in the show, like potentially having Nakamura come out and having CM Punk come out as the guy that Nakamura has been talking about, that would have overshadowed it. People would have kind of blanked out of the rest of the show. They would have headed to social media. They would have started tweeting and going on Facebook, etc. So I think they did the right thing. They got the pop that they wanted. They got the social media heat that they wanted. But they allowed that match to not be overshadowed until the moment it eventually was, I guess, in my opinion. And that's why we're talking about it. McMahon sent Cody, Jericho, and Punk. I don't know. I think people have just kind of like moved on, and maybe like time heals all wounds. Maybe CM Punk's come back because he wants to prove a point. There's a lot of things been said about him by a lot of people about the way he went out of AEW. Certainly from the way Cody's returned, the crowd loves him, and he's kind of proven that he was the face that could have been, the champion of AEW, etc. And maybe he just never had the opportunity to do so, and he had to move elsewhere to do it. And sometimes it's just about being in the right place at the right time. And Cody definitely seems to have flourished on his return back. I think Bayley Kilrich did awesome. Yeah, I know they were saying it on commentary. She was MVP. No no premium live event, no pay-per-view, whatever you would call it, for a couple of months now. Not till the Royal Rumble at the back end of January over in Florida. So they've got plenty of time to work out what they want to do. This is where, in my opinion, though, the LA Knight versus Bray Wyatt last year, their feud got a little bit lost because they didn't have a big blow-off match at pay-per-view. They had to wait until the Royal Rumble. And I think that was to its detriment. A lot of people were like, we need to get him back in the ring. So they can't make that same mistake. When there's big matches to be had, you have to find a way to do it and make it a big event on TV. If you can't find a way to naturally spread it out till the next pay-per-view. So this is the bit where I fear for some of the creative. But luckily they've blown off a few of their feuds and now can start rebuilding and go in different directions as we head into WrestleMania season, which feels crazy to say at the back end of November. One positive to come out of the pandemic era of WWE's two-night WrestleMania. Agree. Good that give WWE plenty of time to build towards Rumble. Yeah, that's in response to there being 2 months. So yeah, they don't seem to have any like massive feuds that are ongoing now. They've got a chance to start rebuilding, as Misfit says there. Also, Kairi just skimmed the ring while Bayley was getting beat. It was quite adorable. Yeah, Kairi's come back and she's just kind of like, I'm going to do my own thing, and if you like it, then great. If you don't, then that's on you. What about next year's Survivor Series? 1 War Game match and 1 5 versus 5 traditional Survivor Series match. I think the War Games match, like a Hell in a Cell match, has to make sense. They built the Judgment Day feud with the babyface team over a course of months, like literally months. So it made sense to have that match kind of be the final blow off. When it comes to next year, I'm fine there being a War Games match as long as it makes sense in that feud. If not, try and make it focused around the traditional Survivor Series match. I still believe, and I'm probably one of the few, if you're going to have the Raw versus SmackDown element of Survivor Series that they went with for years, there needs to be some sort of jeopardy. And I think it can work in the sense of the winning team gets number 30 in the Royal Rumble. And then from there, you get the TV shows. Obviously, if Raw won, Raw would have weeks where they have a tournament of whoever was on the winning team. They have a tournament to get that number 30 spot that Raw now has, or on SmackDown, whatever. So there are ways of doing it. I just wish they would kind of steer into there being a bit of jeopardy. So that's what I want to see when it comes to Survivor Series matches. WWE just tweeted that Raw graphic with CM Punk on it. WWE on their Twitter or X account, whatever you want to call it, if you go have a look, their header is CM Punk, which in 2023 feels mental and surreal. But yeah, go check it out. That's their cover photo. If you have the power to change one WrestleMania match ending, what's it going to be? As in like previous ones. If it's previous ones, I'd 100% change Brock winning against Undertaker. For me, it wasn't needed. Undertaker should have gone out undefeated at WrestleMania, in my opinion. But that's the one that always sticks out as the big sort of change. Plus, if I was going on a personal one, I always wanted the Hardys to win at TLC and not Edge and Christian. But that's just, it would have no ramifications on the future. The Undertaker one actually would do, because it would still be an Undertaker's prestigious Mania one. And I knew that the next one that might be said was Cody winning at Mania 39. I'm not mad at him not winning, especially if it gets 40 and he gets an even bigger moment there, because I think it will mean a hell of a lot more. And also some of the stuff we've had since for Cody has been fantastic. Do you think CM Punk overshadowed everything Survivor Series? Not everything. People are still talking about how good the matches were. And that's probably the way that we can kind of wrap things up. CM Punk is the name everyone's talking about. But the great thing is WWE are putting out some stellar premium live events at the moment. They're getting better at their weekly programming as well. NXT's firing all cylinders. So CM Punk is grabbing the headlines, as you knew he would if he would return. But let's face it, if you go back and read some of the comments in here, people are talking about the women's match as well. So that speaks volumes. I think had this been even a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, everything would have been about CM Punk. If he hadn't gone to AEW and he come back into WWE instead, then it would have been the CM Punk show. What we're seeing now instead is, how does CM Punk fit into this nice, harmonious locker room that they seem to have? How does he fit into the momentum? Will he kill that momentum? That's more of a question about where people want to know what's going to happen with CM Punk, and how does he fit into WWE in 2023 under Triple H? And will it be any different, or will it all end in tears like it seems to have happened a few times throughout his career? We've got Blair Hathaway. Lovely to see you in, Blair. I would love to see CM Punk and LA Knight. Yep, CM Punk and LA Knight. Let's just imagine for a second the promos that you could get between the two of them. That would be a pretty awesome feud to see, especially as LA Knight was bound to be outspoken, especially he's never held back against anyone else, so and vice versa for CM Punk. So I'd love to see it, especially on the microphone. So let's see if he ventures down across to SmackDown to see LA Knight. I'm sure he'd be one of the first people, because again, imagine the pop of LA Knight coming out when CM Punk's talking. So let's see what happens tomorrow night on Raw. They might open with a cross-legged CM Punk in the middle of the ring or on top of the stage, and it'll be interesting to see if that's the way they go. Will they give Randy Orton the big opening of Monday Night Raw tomorrow, because they know there's going to be a big audience tuning in to find out the fallout from a very eventful Survivor Series? So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me, and let me know in the comments what you think the future holds for CM Punk. If you haven't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. We'll be getting some more guests back on. I'm sure Sam will be back on Friday, when I'll be covering the fallout, probably from Monday Night Raw. We'll be talking a little bit more about Survivor Series. We'll be talking about this gap that's coming up as well, into the Premium Live event calendar all the way through to the Royal Rumble. And we'll be having lots more content coming out over the next few weeks, all the way through to WrestleMania season. And then into WrestleMania season, we'll obviously be talking over in Philadelphia. But it's been lovely to see you all in. I hope you have had a lovely weekend. You've enjoyed the wrestling that you've seen, and we've got more great wrestling coming up too. All the best. I've been Andy, and this has been Wrestling Royalty.